that last May here in The Hague, in the Peace Palace, we had a very first global conference on how are we going to organize accountability in a digital age. What is it? What kind of instruments could we develop in it? Hello? Yep. That discussion will get a second summit, most likely November this year. So, from where we are right now, halfway, it would be for us, but also for community, a very good idea to get a European perspective on accountability. We're developing the principles for accountability in a digital age as a guideline to have experience. Thank you.
I think this also goes very much into the discussion that came up after Macron made his huge list of proposals for how to regulate the internet. So probably that could lead into one of the linking elements.
That's indeed one of the things I'd like to add. It's not just for Europe, but it's an opportunity for Europe to lead this global discussion. Because if there's any place in the world where you could have or should have a discussion on accountability, that is in Europe. And hopefully in The Hague, being the city of peace and justice. Thanks.
Any other comments or Jon?
I wanted to make an argument for educational sessions, especially when there was a discussion about deep learning or AI being biased, and why is it biased, and maybe we should explain the process of producing deep learning systems so that we know where the bias comes from, and that from other systems that are programmed in a classical way, that programs have a huge influence, but for deep learning systems it's not programs who have the influence, but it's rather the training data, it's the design, it's different stages where the bias comes in. And of course we should explain it, and this will have an impact on the discussion and make it might put the discussion on a higher level, and of course should have an impact on the results.
Okay. And I would also catch up on what we just spoke about, because in the morning session you mentioned a GDPR session or a GDPR educational session, and we were discussing pro and cons for this. But we just had an idea jointly, since the GDPR session, for instance, and this goes of course for all the other sessions too, is just after the lunch break, we could take 30 minutes from the lunch break and offer here an educational update on GDPR before the discussion goes into the workshop. This might attract not everyone, because those who are familiar with it, they might just participate in the discussion. But for others to catch up, we can really skip 30 minutes of the lunch break to be earlier in the room and start here. I think that could be something how to accommodate all the requests that we have. I think I take that idea into a revised program. And regarding machine learning, but how did you call it? Deep learning,
but machine learning is just a little bit broader, but it's
okay. I also would hope that at least maybe on day zero we could maybe add here another educational track. And one thing I would like to share with you actually is someone told me he was searching for blockchain on the internet, and he ended up on the EuroDIG website, and he watched the video from Tallinn where Walid from ISOC was playing with the chocolates and explaining how blockchain works. And he said this was so valuable that it was like an online webinar just for free on the internet. And he was so happy that he founded it. I think it was also the first time that this person was in touch with EuroDIG. This is something we never thought about. Just by recording these sessions, putting them on the wiki, this becomes really a a learning resource even beyond the event, and we should be very mindful about this. That these side effects are happening. Sometimes we just don't know about it, and therefore I pretty much agree that these educational things could play a greater role, and we could probably find time here on the Zero or in the program.
One important thing about EuroDIG is diversity. But diversity means that everybody has different educational backgrounds, and that we have to find a common basis first in order to have a better discussion. And therefore, I think educational sessions are very important.
Rainer, do you have an online comment?
Yes, we have someone from remote. I will try we can accommodate him. Please, you have the floor. Ahmad, you have the floor. You raised your hand. Obviously not. Sorry.
Rana, maybe you can ask him to type his question or comment in the chat, and you can read it out loud.
I will do.
Okay. Other proposals. I also heard from some of the partners that mentioned one big thing is missing here regarding the big companies that are dominating the internet. Thomas, just Frederick?
Yes. We had an interesting conversation with Tatiana and Thomas, and maybe before I get there, if I can revisit this AI stuff following Chris' comment this morning. We are pretty well aligned on this. Just for people to understand how I see issues in a EuroDIG perspective from my community, from the Internet Society. We always try to see what it is that has an impact on the open Internet, the global open Internet as we like it, trustworthy, secure, global open Internet. And if we see an impact on this, we say, okay, that is something that we should address. So this is our view, this is my view. AI to me is still something that I have difficulties, even if I understand that it's super important at political level. But AI, the relationship between AI and internet governance or the internet is still something I have difficulties to see. So I would like us to find an angle. And then we were talking about emerging technologies, emerging issues. And we came up with this conversation that I emphasized this morning: consolidation or integration, vertical integration. So Tatiana, please help me. But the idea is this. Actually, don't help me, but take the floor after me. The idea is this: there is emerging issues big time, and those are the fact that we have actors, players in the internet field that are vertically integrated. They own the internet infrastructure, they own the service level, the application level, a perfect integration, and that is a big risk. We know them. I don't need to name them, but we know that those actors exist and they grow in vertical integration. What it is that we can do about this? This is a discussion that we need to have, and especially as an emerging issue that we see coming. And in discussing, yes, Valentina might just react as well. One of the issues that we recognize is that the usual tool that exists, especially in Europe, might not fit. So one of the clear reactions would be to say, yeah, but we have a competition toolbox in Europe that is just perfect to deal with those big giants, and we got GDPR. So why, guys, are you worried? And our thought was, that is not it. We don't need to come back to the old good times of the telecoms when we applied that kind of remedies, because remedies was the word that we use in regulation. So we need to have something that's coming up, a better reflection, and to me a multi-stakeholder. So that was the idea that might well be squeezed somewhere as an overarching theme for this or as one of the topics. So I see hence, and I'm really happy. I believe that is something where businesses will be entrusted to discuss as well, at least to vote over regulation. So I'm starting with you and others.
Thank you very much, Frederick, for setting up the scene. So, my takeover, in regards to this, and my thoughts is that basically, whomever I talked to in the past 2 years about this vertical and horizontal integration on the market is about the use of the existing toolbox for the regulation or competition. You know that in Europe for many years, competition and regulation were separated, and they were trying to balance it. My problem with this is that whatever discussion comes up here reflects the previous discussion in the telecom sector. Market entry, vertical integration, then competition on the infrastructure level, competition on the service level. It's not going to work here. But I would like also to say that it is related to the internet governance. It's just not about the market, because whatever comes up there, and we know from the history of telecom regulation in Europe how this, hit and miss, try and fail scheme, like for example about functional separation of telecom operators to ensure like local loop unbundling and whatever, so to ensure competition, brought us back to the debate again. You scratch my back, I scratch your back, but these are so much integrated. They're like monsters. So there will be probably off-the-cuff solution at the end, and it is related to the internet governance, because whatever is going to happen there will affect access, will affect innovation, will affect regulation in other fields, like for example security and so on. So we need to get into this debate. We need to recognize it, and I do propose that if we put a topic there, we have to avoid the words regulation and the words competition. We might talk about integration, consolidation, and the need of new toolbox, new instruments, new remedies, new responses. But we might want to avoid the old terms, just not to set the context wrong.
I have two fingers from Chris. Then I have a question to connect the two speakers, Michael and Wout.
Hi, thank you. I do think the consolidation and vertical integration idea is something that's very important. I think it's also somewhat already reflected in some of the discussions here. And I think Tanya, your point about not mentioning regulation, I think something really important that we need to not miss is that this is not all about regulatory mechanisms. I mean, Peter is sitting here who actually put in the proposal about DOH. But that's actually also in some sense consolidation issue that really is not touched at all at this point by regulation. It's something that's happening in the technical space, but where we're consolidating the power that certain actors have over certain processes in the internet. And so I think we need to look at it a little bit more broadly. So I'm not sure whether that means a single session on this, or maybe a theme that sort of links a number of different sessions and tries to sort of identify what the drivers are here that are creating this consolidation and this vertical integration along multiple different vertices.
Just two fingers, yes. Because sometimes we think that regulation responds to everything. No, there might be market response, there might be community response, there might be innovation response. So this question is kind of spread. So what are the toolbox and what are the trends?
I have just a question to Fries. The discussion that just started up, would that to my knowledge, that would kind of relate also to what you proposed in terms of accountability of Europe in a global context and so on. Is that going into the same direction? Because I'm looking at where we have the free slots. Is that probably something that we could bring together and collaborate? Maybe Fries, I'll let you answer first, and there were two fingers from yours.
By all means, yes. Basically, because accountability there's no ownership. So the more people, more stakeholders involved, yes.
I would be very much open to see how this goes together, although I do think the interrelated issues not quite, but for example, the discussion about vertical integration normally include the discussion about, for example, accountability of algorithms, accountability for innovation and whatever. So they might come together in this context, yes, but we need to figure out how to bring them.
Walter. It's not on these slides, but if you move back slides, this is two fingers. Yes. You move back two slides, it's in one of the flash sessions called consolidation. And it comes from exactly the same point of view. It was brought in by myself. Right. And what it comes from is that I organized a session with the Internet Engineering Task Force in Paris at the IGF. And one of the main topics on trends, mega trends they see is consolidation on the Internet and the way that they are approaching it from an Internet technical point of view. And one of the conclusions at the end of the session was that people agreed on the fact that this should be a main topic for the IGF in 2019. And hence I put it in as a subject for EuroDIG in 2019, and it has support from an organization here in the Netherlands to do so. So if that merges somehow, then I'm willing to cooperate or organize the flash session, whatever is appropriate.
Okay, sounds like we are just working out a new topic. Now going back to the queue, Michael?
Well, yeah, different thematic. We were discussing in former times, and we now have the same discussion in Germany for the forthcoming IGF, that is the underdeveloped participation of SMEs, especially for internet governance, because they have no idea, and they are going more and more into the area of digitization. They deal with data, they manufacture the sensors, and I think it is hard to get them to internet governance, but I just had a very short chat with Christina on how to proceed or possibly proceed on this, but it's very high on the agenda of the IGF in November in Germany, and so I had the idea maybe we can start with the EuroDIG here on the day 0 with a special event for SMEs and trying, of course, to address them before, but with the goal to get them to the UN IGF as well, and in a different number.
From the online participants, we have Vittorio Bertola, who is adding to the discussion here in the room. It would be good to frame the important DNS over HTTPS discussion as a part of a broader theme on centralization and ongoing death of the original distributed federated internet model. So if I understand him right, and Vittorio, please correct me if I'm wrong, he's proposing that the workshop, which now looks like, as it is very focused on the DHO and DNS over HTTPS discussion, that this maybe could be put into a broader context, which might accommodate also the ideas that just came up here in the room. And I encourage again also the participants that they take the floor. Audio must be working. No, he's typing. No, I'm proposing to keep the workshop as it is, but to connect with other events, Flash, etc. as the speaker. Okay, point taken. Good. Okay. Other comments? Okay, then I can again go back to online participants. Michael Otja is saying something to say, though, is that I missed out of some of the discussion because the live stream isn't live anymore. Oh, no, sorry, it's the thing about the... No, where she was talking about... telecommunication, but it's very much similar issue when it comes to media. Okay, that's Michael. If you would like to clarify, then please let me know. For me, it's not totally clear if it's a comment to the chat or to the discussion here. Silent? Okay. We're done, yes. Well, the question is now, what I heard from you, that we should add another session where we discuss accountability and or this vertical integration and the future of the internet and accountability. The question is day zero a good place for that? Then we would have one slot here. If day zero is not a good slot, then we have to rearrange the program and kick something else out. That's probably not something we can decide on, discuss here. That's something where subject matter experts will convene after we collected all the input. But I think, looking at Frederick, he's nodding, that possibly there is another topic that came into the discussion now that we should see how we accommodate this in our EuroDIG agenda. Martin.
Thank you, Frederick. I think actually for that accountability, the day zero slot at this moment may be least disruptive, but also useful, because it may set the scene of a quite horizontal subject that may hit a lot of sessions. So I think if we use those 120 minutes of the slot 4, that might be useful. Yeah.
Do you mean this year? Okay.
Least disruptive and useful to inform the rest of the program. And of course, not everybody will be there because it's noontime and day zero.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Giacomo? Frederick?
Thank you.
Thank you. About the view that way you are summarizing proposal, I remember you that I think that we need to have a space for discussing about elections, as I suggested before lunchtime. I don't want that the lunch help you to forget about that. And the other suggestion that I didn't mention before, the first one is about the GDPR workshop. I think that the key for the GDPR this time has to be the implementation, because the real focus now is all on the implementation. If the implementation will go wrong or will not happen, the GDPR effect will vanish. So this is, for me, the key aspect. And I think that we need to involve then the privacy authorities, because these are the people that have to deal with this implementation in the next month. Then I think that we need to fit somewhere the Internet Universality indicators of the UNESCO that are for us as European a very important element, because when we talk about regulation, we need to measure, to be able to measure the healthiness of each country about the internet. So I think that we need to fit somewhere. I think that is easy to link to some of the points that we have already in the agenda. And finally, about workshop 7, I think that we have a perfect case there. The workshop 7 is about the threat to journalists through the trolls. I think that we need to focus that on the very specific topic that was the first sentence in Europe that has been made in Finland, that condemned to prison, firm prison years, people that was doing cyber harassment to journalists. And I think that this is something that need to be commented and discussed extensively, because it constitutes a very important precedent for democracy and the role of the media in modern democracy.
Could you please pass the phone to Peter?
Thank you. So I'm probably not terribly familiar with the process, but I was wondering whether this is the time to really add new topics. What I think might be more helpful is add perspective, and I would read the proposal or suggestion to talk about integration and consolidation as another angle which can be added, for example, to the DNS over HTTP topic, but maybe to others, and I don't have all the 200 proposals in my mind. And DOH is definitely a prime example for this kind of consolidation threat, or however you may call that. It could be used for the labeling of the slot and so on and so forth, but adding things here and there, maybe it's a bit too late in the stage. Also, with the slots on the day zero, I'm not really sure I understand what the target audiences are here. In my remark just before the lunch break, I said that the educational track is already competing with part of the content, and especially with the content that needs the result, or not the result, but the learning experience from this educational track. So it might be more helpful to move that track or split it or add something to the day zero, so that people coming to the first workshop, or the first plenary, I should say, can have that preparation if they aren't experienced so far and are new to EuroDIG and those technical topics. So let's not redistribute that one free slot until we've resolved the other scheduling conflicts. That's my plea here.
So you're basically proposing to have the educational tracks, in particular the technical ones, move to day zero?
Well, I'm raising two fingers so I can respond.
Yeah.
That depends on who the target audience is. I heard people say that, uncontested, that this is, for politicians and so on and so forth, but they can't be in two places at the same time. Maybe they can, but probably not. And getting the initial education while the other session is already running. So I'm not sure what the ultimate goal of this is and who is this aimed at. It might be an interesting alternative to the workshop, again, sorry, the plenary one, but if it's intended to feed into this, then it should, of course, happen maybe on day zero or in the early morning or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, point taken. Christina, and then Valentina.
Sorry, I just have a quick question. Are we setting a general theme on the whole conference as well? And when will that be done?
Once there are no any other comments on the program.
Okay, just to feed in 2 points on that, because I think that it's really important to have a theme this year that also sets a bit the vision for example, how we can sell this to other private sector stakeholders, looking at that we're in a year with an election, a European election, but also taking stock of the discussions in Paris, of course. I'm sure many will be interested to see here what is the European view on internet governance, and I'm looking forward to hear the proposals on the theme.
Mm-hmm. We will come to that sooner than later. Valentina, and then Osman. I'm sorry, I still have to learn your name, and then Mark.
Thank you.
Valentina, please go ahead.
Yes, I was just working. Yes, I was just collecting all the things addressed to the Commission to then reply to all of them. So first, for Giacomo and the session, the election, I completely agree on having a session on how social media especially are impacting politics, the political scene and election. I'm just afraid that given it will just be 3 weeks, more or less, after the European election, I'm just afraid that if we focus too much on the EP election, we will just have a discussion on the result, on what actually happened, more than what was the impact and whether the expert group on misinformation or disinformation and their code of conduct had any impact really on the election. So more than focusing on the social media part, we will just focus on the result of the election. Because I think 3 weeks after is just too early to have a real analysis on what was the effect. So yes, in general, I will take it as a topic, but I will pay attention not to focus too much just on the European election, but only as an example among others. That's one. On the GDPR session or not, and on the educational idea, I like the idea of having an educational track. Also the one that Adam said on how the internet actually works for people like policymaker. I just want to say, I mean, one thing is having a session on 1 year after GDPR, what are the issues, how it's actually happening, how it is implemented, and for sure that we should be as multi-stakeholder as possible and diversified as possible, because we want to hear different point of view and how actually, you know, companies also are dealing with it on a daily basis. But another thing is an educational track on what GDPR is, and on that, I think only experts should talk. I'm not for diversifying or being, because not everybody knows and not everybody should explain in the same way that not everybody knows how the internet works. So for the educational part, I would rely on expert. For a workshop, it's a different story. So if we want to have it 2 sessions, then that's it. Did I have any other comment? Yes, I like the idea of the concentration, consolidation of power and all the impact that can have on different issues. It's not just competition, it's not just market, it's not just cybersecurity, it's actually on privacy, on how in life of everyday users this can go, as far as it can go. And yes, I agree, it should be as open as possible and diversify. I wouldn't put regulation or any words like that in that. Yeah, there was something else. Oh yes, a moment of PR. It was, I think, with Olivier comment at some point on AI, on the bias of algorithm, and everybody says, you, the GDPR, what have you done? But I can say proudly, you know, that GDPR says that users are entitled to know there is transparency of algorithm, and they actually can appeal against automated decision makers. Just a moment of PR for us. So. Yeah, that's okay. But this can be part of what happened after 1 year, how many people actually used it, whether anyone used it. But it is a right of the data subject to appeal and to know what the algorithm actually, how it works.
I want to continue with a online comment. Michael Ocha, I was not able to read what he said. He clarified no. Essentially, the point that Tanya made is so relevant. Language and context are important, and when it comes to media-related issues, not just telecommunication ones, something that we have recognized is that there is conflation between content regulation and market regulation. I think the latter is important and obviously requires the private sector, but is really key for media sustainability and issues like misinformation. But on one of the reasons why misinformation is so relevant is exactly because of the lack of adequate market regulation. So he makes the linkage between media and the thing that Tanya was very vocal on. Next in the row is Osman.
Yes, thank you. In the morning, I made a suggestion about including like fourth industrial revolution. I believe it is second. MIT professors believe it's second, but nevertheless, in Europe, it's mentioned as fourth industrial revolution, universal basic income under economics and innovation. Nobody commented on that, so I'm not sure how it was received. I really think we are going through, since 18th century, the first industrial revolution. All our institutes are going through a paradigm shift. Actually, economics, society, culture, everything is going through. And now 5G is entering into picture, yet accelerating this change. I think there should be, we should be addressing that somehow. Universal basic income is very hot topic now being discussed with this new automated technologies potentially replacing human mind, robotics, smart robotics, and so on. So the whole scenery, you know, economics, industry, even legislative and legal scenery have been changing. I think we should be addressing it someplace. And I still recommend that issue to be taken in this forthcoming EuroDIG. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Mark? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. I just wanted to make a couple of points about other linkages and where they might be accommodated in the program. The first one is with regard to the Global Internet and Jurisdiction Conference, which will have been held in Berlin on the 3rd to the 5th of June. And as I'm sure many colleagues here will know, that includes 3 tracks. One is on law enforcement access to e-evidence, which is relevant to workshop 10. Second track is on jurisdictional conflicts relating to harmful content. And the third one is relating to domain name takedowns. Will there be opportunities in the program to reflect on the outcomes of the Berlin conference, of the Internet and Jurisdiction Conference? I don't know whether it's a day zero point or an information session, a flash session point for the project to report on the outcomes of Berlin. And then secondly, I was just wondering about the intersessional best practice fora for the IGF, in particular the one on AI, Internet of Things and Big Data, whether we foresee from EuroDIG some contribution from the conference into the best practice forum process leading up to the IGF in Berlin, in particular on that one, on AI, Internet of Things and Big Data. The other 3 are cybersecurity, gender and access, and local content. And then my final point is about keynote speakers, because I'm conscious it's, 4 months or so to achieve commitments from high-level speakers for keynotes, including possibly ministers. What is the process for identifying who to invite and then issuing those invitations, given the long-term lead-up, you know, to get into people's diaries? Thanks.
On the last one, on your question, I can just tell you that we very much rely on the host. If the host invites on the highest level, we will get other ministers confirmed, and as soon as we have the first ministers confirmed, then it easily fills up with other high-level people. That's the way it works. We haven't yet found a better way of inviting people or getting confirmed high-level people earlier, and that's also one of the reasons why we are doing the program also a little bit earlier, because sometimes time was too short to get them into the program on a late stage. On the other hand, you can have confirmations very early from very high level, and then they have a different agenda on the time when the EuroDIG is, and they will not come. It's difficult, I must say, and if anyone has ideas or suggestions how to overcome this, let us know. The Secretariat can only be the executive body. Back to the row. I have lost a little bit overview. Wout, and was there anyone else? Tanya. Take the mic.
I forgot. So, yeah, I know. Responding to, this is my 2 fingers, responding to Frederik on artificial intelligence and what should it go to. I'm not an expert, and maybe that helps a little bit, because what I would think of being of importance is how artificial intelligence is going to affect the internet or the internet infrastructure or my personal use of the internet? Can I use it as I want to use it, despite or maybe because of artificial intelligence? That makes it personal. The other one, because nobody said anything about smart cities yet, and that's one of the subtopics I also put in. It comes from a very idealistic sort of point of view, but something which may be very interesting to discuss, because in the whole world, governments, private sector, and perhaps even private persons are collecting data from who knows where. And it's being used usually for surveillance or for commercial exploits in one way or another. But all this data sits there somewhere in a huge data mountain, to call it that. And how can we make that data anonymously, of course, available to research in whatever direction? So whether it's here in the city, traffic management, or perhaps health, or climate change, or innovators who were trying to invent something new and could do so with data which is out there, but just inaccessible. And perhaps there are already sort of initiatives around the world, but let's try and see if we can identify them, and from there perhaps even build on them. And how can we get private sector and governments to share anonymous data with researchers and etc. So that is something which is idealistic, but could actually improve the world a whole lot if we could make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Could you pass the phone to Fries? He has 2 fingers on what you just said. Ollie? 2 fingers? Okay.
Very short idea. Just a week before, the ITU will organize their AI for Good Global Summit. It's basically looking at how AI is going to support the realization of the Sustainability Development Goals. So you have a great opportunity also a week later to see how you could tap into that discussion happening in Geneva.
Olivier?
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. Actually, if we go back one slide, you'll note that the track on algorithms is educational track. So there's going to be quite some emphasis on explaining AI in the way that it relates to algorithms. I think that kind of goes somehow some way along. There's a saying, you've all heard it, data is the new oil. And last time I went to fill up my car, I did not manage to get free petrol at the petrol station, unfortunately. And I have a real concern that any data today is worth so much that it's very difficult for companies that hold that data to actually release it if they don't see some kind of financial incentive for it. But you're absolutely right. It would be great to be able to share it for non-profit projects and so on. Unfortunately, I've been involved in some data-related work in my personal life. I mean, in my professional life and so on. And any data we've always had to pay for. It's really amazing. So.
Oh,
and Cambridge Analytica is a good one, making a lot of money. Was it non-profit? Oh, there you go.
So I have 2 fingers now, but I give the floor first to Auke because he hasn't spoken today.
Thank you. My name is Auke Pals. I'm from the Dutch Youth. I want to react on that because the point all of you mentioned was not only related to smart cities. I guess this is just a general issue that companies and other service providers hold personal data from you. On the other hand, to react also on the smart issue Wout submitted, I guess it's also to stay with smart cities, but to step back from the human rights perspective and go more to the technical perspective, because entering the new era of smart cities will also introduce more technical issues. For instance, more and more devices entering the internet and want to have a connection, and the security issues combined with that. I guess that is also that's also important to discuss with us.
The next 2 fingers from Arnold, Wout, Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. Responding to what Mark said about the global internet jurisdiction project, they will meet again, indeed, in Berlin, beginning of June. And I fully agree with you. We should give them a podium, a slot in the EuroDIG meeting. As you see at the screen, we have 6 rooms available, including one plenary. But in fact, if we get an agreement with the venue, then we will have 7 rooms available. That is a plenary room, 4 workshop rooms, and 2 rooms where we can have flash sessions. So perhaps there's a need some more room that we can give to the global internet jurisdiction project to present their findings, because indeed it's a very useful project, and they are working very hard, very focused, and to let them indicate what they have come up with in Berlin is very useful. The keynote speakers fully agree that we should come up with some names pretty soon. I'm going to at least to inform my minister shortly after this meeting on where we are, and because the minister would like to know what the program is, otherwise they will not come. So if I looked at this draft program, I think it's a very clear picture of, at least for my minister to inform her and say, well, first of all, can you agree with this? And secondly, is it perhaps useful to invite fellow ministers from other countries to this EuroDIG meeting? So I will take that up, yes.
Okay, Wout, Thomas, and then, sorry, Tanja, you were also 2 fingers? Okay, I thought this was 1 finger. Okay, so give it to Tanja. I didn't realize that she had a 2 fingers comment. But we shouldn't misuse the 2 fingers concept, right?
I'm not misusing the fingers concept. I see that Internet Jurisdiction Project came up twice already, and I want to say that we do have to give them the flash session, but in no way I believe that the results of another conference should be reflected in the plenary of the workshop. So I would be, it's an amazing project, but it is a flash level. It's not a plenary, it's not a workshop. Thank you. They have been present at EuroDIG for a long time as workshops, so it should be flash. Thanks.
Okay, now Wout, Thomas, then Martin.
Very short. The data is new oil. That reminded me of the last thing I want to say as a plenary of a keynote speaker, perhaps, Victor Meyer Schoenberger. He has written extensively on this topic, which I think is a very interesting thing to hear more about his ideas on what society could do with data. And he's talking about, for example, tax companies for data, so that it becomes publicly available. Is it a good idea? We'll find out. But it's something which may be of interest to have a plenary discussion on, or a keynote.
Thomas?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment on the notion of companies owning data. I mean, normally these companies don't necessarily create the data themselves. It's the users that at least play a key role in creating the data. And the users could also decide that they would create their own data in a different environment that would not be owned by companies, but maybe by other structures. So there's already some thinking that is going on in that direction by some people who are not too happy with the current situation. This is not a God-given that data need to be privately owned and privately processed. The fact that this is dominant now doesn't mean that it has to stay like this forever. Thank you.
Martin, and then Chris.
So actually, that was the 2 finger because Olivier said something some time ago, some fingers ago. Indeed, if we talk about data, let's not only talk about privacy and privacy intrusion and that, but also about open data, open science. Europe has a very clear policy towards an open data economy as much as possible. And let's take that into account too if we talk about data. Let's make use of data for society, and that has 2 sides. Privacy, but also open data. And for keynote speakers, let's not forget about the European Commission. They drive a large part of the digital agenda in Europe.
For sure. Chris?
I just want to very quickly say, Tim Berners-Lee has already come up as mentioned for a keynote speaker, but the SOLID project that he's now working on is very much about individuals' data usage, identity online. So that might be a a hook if we want to try and give him a more specific reason to be there and contribute to the discussion. It might be very relevant.
Absolutely. No, I see no two fingers. That's good. Any one fingers? Okay, so just for you to let you know, Elisabeth, the lady in the front row, she's taking all the notes because managing the room does not allow to keep everything in my head. So we will refer to what Elisabeth has collected so far. And as I said, after the comment period, 2 weeks from today, subject matter experts and secretariat will convene again and think about how we incorporate all the ideas that have come up here and will come up over the next 2 weeks.